Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. That is my daily prayer. This is the Life Given Podcast, and I'm your host, Isaac Lopez. Well, this may be the week that you switch over to audio if you are one of the listeners or viewers that use YouTube as their main platform to access this show, because it's warm. And I am going to be sweating like a hog. And really, there's not much I can do about it because at the time of this recording, it's just after the hottest part of the day. So my apologies if I turn the fan on. It'll just be super loud in here. And also, it's Moscow, so there's no such thing as air conditioning in apartments. Anyway, if you want to support me in my troubles and in what I'm going through with this heat wave, please like and subscribe on whatever platform you use. And also, we are excited to announce that we are beginning the Life Given Podcast Conversation Facebook group, where we can have more interaction, you and I, and actually have a place for conversing and discussing the things that we talk about on this podcast. And you can have some feedback and input on what goes on here. Because if you guys are listening, then you guys have first dibs on what is talked about on the show. So if you desperately, if you think that this podcast needs some improvement, please go and join that group. And also, there might be some exciting stuff that you guys will be the first to know there in that group, maybe even before I announce it here on the podcast. So go ahead, go find that on Facebook. I'll link to it in the show notes. But anyway, let's get to the show. A lot of exciting things happening at the Life Given news and podcast. So keep your eyes on that page. But there's also a lot going on in the world. And just as I predicted a few months ago, actually, when it was in the middle of season one, the government is not going to let this thing go. The government will not allow the power that they had or have, that they have gained through the coronavirus, through the pandemic and emergency of the pandemic. They aren't going to relinquish that easily. And I said that a few months ago. I think we could have seen that coming because truly, when men get power, they relinquish it very, very reluctantly. And I think that that is why our government is set up so much the way that it is, so that there are checks and balances built into place. Now, over time, we've seen that if you allow if you allow the alligators to reside in one place, it becomes a swamp after a period of time. And we've had the same people there for decades, and that shows. And they don't want to give up that power, whatever it is, wherever it may be. Let's talk about the power that the governor of California has and is wielding with energy, with vehemence. It has been the line that has been drawn in the sand. This is the battle for the foreseeable future. This coronavirus, the pandemic that we have been discussing for the last 5 months, is the thing that will be in discussion and the battle for the next 4 months. Why do I say 4 months? Because that coincides with the election. And I think it depends on who wins the election that we will see either a rise in popularity of this topic even more than what we've seen, or it will drop off and almost pretend like, and we will pretend like it didn't even happen. Those are two extremes, but I think that those are the most likely options of what will happen. So Governor Gavin Newsom, he has been one of the leading governors when it comes to lockdowns. It's his states that have really been aggressive when it comes to lockdowns compared to a number of the other states here in the U.S. And so it makes sense now that the media and a lot of our leaders are preaching second wave, it's coming back, it's coming back. We don't have a vaccine yet, we need to lock down again. And we'll get to that on Friday, because I think the lockdowns are one of the last resorts. Instead, it was our first option. But knowing that he was at the forefront of the first wave in combating it, it makes sense that he would take steps to be the first in combating the second wave. Already, we have seen states going back into second lockdowns. We have seen states starting to reverse their reopening. Idaho here has not completely reopened. That we never got there. We were close. We were in stage 4, but we have been held and captivated to stage 4, to the 4-step plan. We're still on step 4. We have not gotten onto the landing. We have not gotten clear of this pandemic, so it seems. So the governor, Gavin Newsom, his brilliance, has decided to reverse many of the to reverse a lot of his orders, and as in the last week, and even as we speak, places are going back into lockdowns depending on where you are. Now, I don't want to belabor the point. We've discussed this multiple times in this second season and in shows recently about the math, the statistics, and the fatality rate, because I think that's really the thing we should be measuring and keeping an eye on, even though the media has constantly pointed to cases are rising, cases are rising. Well, what's the death rate right now? Even if the death rate may be going up, even though there might be a spike in your area of deaths, what is it like globally? What's it like nationally? But I think it's also fair to consider what's it like when where your state is involved. This is the coronavirus fatality rates in California. Okay, let's just look at California. What are they going through and what are they experiencing? Because maybe it makes sense to go back into lockdowns in this one area. Now, that's why our government is set up in the way, and the country is set up in a way so that we have more localized government and they can make more localized decisions, right? It makes sense. So maybe Governor Gavin Newsom has a point here. Maybe he has grounds to stand on. So I went and just looked at the math, okay? And you can find this. I'll link it to you in the show notes. But as of yesterday, or as of the time of recording, I believe 400,000 in California, 400,000 people have been diagnosed with the coronavirus. Do you know how many have died of the coronavirus? 7,764. Now that's 0.019%. Starting to sound a lot like the flu. Anyway, just a thing to. The governor and the experts and the leaders there have decided to put this county watch list out there. And if your county has been in the red zone for 3 days, like if you have a number of fatality rates or a number of cases, then you are going to be reversed back into lockdowns, basically. LA County has the majority of cases, and this makes sense. I think it's the most populated county, or at least it has the most traffic through it. 159,000 cases. Out of those cases, 4,104 people have died. Now, this is above the average of California. Thanks to this county, there's probably more. The state of California looks even worse than it was initially. That, if you take that math and you divide it, it's 0.026%. Okay. Worse than the state average, but still not that bad. Riverside County, 30,340 people have been diagnosed with the coronavirus. 588 deaths have occurred due to the coronavirus. You know what that math is? 0.019%, the state average. And this is in, I think, the second in the second hottest spot in California, Orange County, which there have been a lot of news coming out of Orange County. Nearly 30,000 people have been diagnosed, 29,986. 493 have died. The third worst hotspot, the third worst county in California, has below the state average, 0.016% case fatality rate. It's not that bad. It really isn't that bad. And yet, it is off these statistics that the governor and the leaders in the government of California have decided to start putting people back into lockdowns, starting to hold people from worshiping, from going back to school, from playing football. Okay, what is being allowed to happen here? And some of it isn't being allowed. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But you're allowing the government, you're allowing your leaders to what is called establish a precedent. If they have done it once before, there is more grounds for them to do it again. We said this with the first wave of lockdowns. After about 3 or 4 weeks, it was time to come out. Okay, it was time to come out and play and get back to normal. But no, we continued into lockdowns even until today. So that's what, 120 days in lockdowns? That doesn't sound like the government relinquished that power and authority. Like I was saying, like a lot of people were saying. And now they're mandating masks in some place. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is showing himself to be no better than Governor Newsom. And that's frightening because Texas is supposedly a Republican state. And once again, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you fall on, you can still be dumb. Now you can say, hey, Isaac, like ease up. Let's not slang names here. Let's not call, hey, whatever works almost at this point. That's kind of what I'm at right now. My prayer is that God will bring wisdom to these leaders, that he will bless them with wisdom, but also bravery, because right now it is the popular thing to go back into lockdowns. Recent polls have shown, I think like 57% of Americans think that the coronavirus is the most important issue on the table right now. And that there's a huge approval rating for masks and stuff like that there should be federally mandated mask wearing. And so it is because of this pressure that I think has been inflamed by our leaders and media that now the idea of shutting churches back down, which is happening in California, in the counties that are the hotspots, church services are not allowed. This is from the state of California's government site, okay? They say that if counties that have remained on the county monitoring list for 3 consecutive days will be required to shut down the following industries or activities unless they can be modified to operate outside or by pickup: gyms and fitness centers, places of worship and cultural ceremonies, offices for non-critical infrastructure sectors, and so on and so forth, hair salons, shopping malls. One of these things is not like the other. The place where we worship the one true God should not be up for discussion. Okay, I get it. Like if this pandemic was as bad as it was, or as we were told it was supposed to be, then you know what? I don't mind worshiping from home online. But when the truth comes out that this is not nearly as bad as we were told, the church needs to grow a backbone and say no. And that's what the churches and governor in California are doing. They are suing the governor of California. Now you can argue over the effectiveness of that, but at least they're doing something. At least they're taking a stand, right? They've found their hill. They found their hill, and it's going to come back around to us. Whatever state you're in, I can guarantee you almost assuredly, unless you live in Iowa, maybe, that lockdowns are going to be back on the table for discussion. Okay. And it just depends. Are your churches going to be the backbone of the resistance, the backbone of truth? When the governor of California says, churches are not essential, then what's that saying about his leadership and about the kind of state you live in? Churches are absolutely essential. And when we have gotten to the point where they are being described as non-essential, I think that indicates the state of the spiritual faith, the strength of the faith of the people of America. And I think it's pretty weak. And so I'm not surprised when we see this kind of fear mongering and pressure that is driving America and their politics. And due to this, schools, which I think are going to be the new battleground, are discussing maybe not reopening. Football in high school in the government in California is the start of it's being pushed back to winter. I mean, like this is just the beginning. And we're going to see a huge shakeup in society because of the coronavirus. And we're not going to feel the effects of the virus, of this shutdown, of this locking down of our economy and places of worship and places of education for another year or two at least. Economically speaking, we may be fine for another few months, but it's going to be in 2021 and 2022 that this economy is just going to be reeling. And it's important now that we start opening back up. And God bless these churches in California that are standing up to their leaders, because that's what people have always said in times past, that the church wasn't there. Where were they in the time of slavery? Where were they during this time or that time? Well, I think it's being made pretty clear now where we are and where we stand. So God bless those churches, and it is my prayer that our leaders will see sense, and the people of the United States, specifically Christians, will stand up and make the truth known. So if you have enjoyed what you've heard, I really want to hear your thoughts on the pandemic and what's going on as we get ready for this, in scare quotes, second wave. How are we supposed to respond as Americans and Christians? Let me know at the Life Given podcast conversation Facebook group. You can reach me at the Life Given News on Facebook, Life Given and Received at gmail.com, on Instagram at _TLG podcast _, or on Parler, because I think that's where more conservatives are headed, at TLG podcast. Anyway, remember that the life that you have been given and the life that you have received includes every area of life. Current events are no exception. God bless.